This is why child molesters are immediately killed in jail. There are many parallels between high school and jail life regarding the social aspects. There are the losers and the popular ones, plus everyone in between. Like the outside world, different kinds of people are behind bars. This is CrimeFlicks, your #1 stop for crime stories. The fact that social systems in jail are based on money and power is another way that they represent the outside world. Money-rich inmates can hire their employees and bodyguards from their resources or contributions from relatives and friends. If you're a gang leader, you have a lot of power. Snitches, rapists, and child abusers make up most of the inmates at the bottom of the prison hierarchy. Because they are unreliable and won't hesitate to talk to the public, snitches are despised. Men in prison often have moms, sisters, daughters, and nieces, and convicts dislike it when women are mistreated. This makes rapists unpopular. The lowest of the low, finally, child predators. Why do inmates particularly despise child sex offenders? Watson shared a cell with David Bobb and Louis Conti, serving time in a California prison. Watson observed how the two felt no remorse and continued to boast about their crime while serving life sentences for aggravated sexual assault of an underage child. They further taunted him by having him watch PBS Kids in a common area for prisoners. In his confession letter, Watson admitted that he could not sleep because he disregarded every impulse. He initially requested moving to a separate facility to escape his aggressive inclinations, but this request was eventually denied. In the end, Watson caved and said, "I'll do everyone a favor," picking up a cane and beating them. They gave the guards an open confession of the killing, and they're now serving a longer sentence. Being a child abuser is awful enough, but flaunting it is even worse. Ex-cops are despised in prison for this reason. Let's explore how a child molester is treated in jail now. When someone enters prison, they don't advertise their wrongdoings unless it's a crime for which they gain street cred, as we said. If you're an ex-cop, you must persuade them that you're not polizia. Child molesters are treated worse. The system has taken some action in the past to protect such inmates. But if you commit a sexual offense, you're very likely to be caught. The Federal Bureau of Prisons estimates that 11.6% of federal inmates are there for sexual offenses, including child molesters and those who engage in obscenity or child prostitution. When child molesters enter prison, their life hangs in the balance due to their anonymity and level of security. You could believe that greater security equals greater protection. However, a higher security level attracts more experienced criminals, such as killers and rapists, eventually resulting in a worse experience. If a convict admits to being a sex offender, they are usually checked in. Still, they can feel comfortable in a low-security federal prison with dormitory housing for nonviolent offenders. As a result, they must be placed in protective custody to prevent attacks by other prisoners. Numerous accounts of sex offenders being brutally treated and harassed as part of the institutional culture exists. The tougher yards are another location they can go if they can't acquire protective custody, since they can be safe there until they can push their way into long-term seclusion. The prisoners knock the sex offender to the ground and trample them in the correctional officer's view to avoid being the next one, whether in the dining hall or front of the lieutenant's office. If they don't check in, they may occasionally be beaten off a yard to avoid being the next David Bobb or Louis Conti. Nothing here is to be proud of. Keeping a low profile is crucial, and since some convicts may have their background checks retrieved and be able to verify, there's no reason to carry a bogus alias needlessly. Let's now go over some of the worst sex offenders and child molesters believed to have died in prison, beginning with the terrible murder of Mr. Robert Munger in 2020. Shane Goldsby was transferred to the Airway Heights Correction Center, or AHCC, in Washington, where he shared a cell with Robert Munger, who had been found guilty of child molestation. Goldsby described how Munger boasted about his crimes. Given that he'd been charged with first-degree child rape, 3 counts of child molestation, and first- and second-degree possession of child pornography, it's easy to imagine that his ears were full. Before he could close his ears, a too familiar story was told. One of Munger's tales involved the rape of Goldie's younger sister. So what do you guys think about this? Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to receive notifications when new crime-related videos are posted. Moving on. Next, we have Cesar Pastrana, a former Cobb County church and school volunteer who admitted to molesting 9 boys in 2012. He was given a life sentence in March 2020 at Hancock State Prison in Sparta, and a fight broke out at 12:15 p.m., resulting in Pastrana's death. According to the Georgia Department of Corrections, agents have reason to believe that Pastrana died due to injuries sustained during an altercation involving another inmate on March 13. Although it's unclear whether his death was connected to the crimes he committed against children or whether it was a separate incident, many people think that the other prisoner attacked him because he had abused defenseless children. Homicide has been ruled out as the cause of death for now. Now, some would say that torture is a fate worse than death, and in some ways they're right, especially in light of what 45-year-old prisoner Charles has to say about the strictest jails in Britain. He reported seeing a sex offender slashed in the shower to Vice News, saying that they held him down, sliced him across the nips of his face, and then one of the boys plunged a blade into his flesh. Adam Johnson, a former Sunderland FC player imprisoned for kissing, grooming, and groping a 15-year-old schoolgirl fan, also shared a cell. Charles Johnson claimed he had to persuade his fellow inmates that he was not a child molester. The fate of these prisoners is either getting stabbed, sacked, or slashed, Charles continued, adding that his friend was the wing cleaner and it took him an hour to clean the showers and walls. According to government figures from 2015, male sexual offenders have accounted for nearly 30% of homicide victims since 2007, although they only make up around 15% of the jail population. They remain a vulnerable group in jail institutions, and without re-entry planning and unit management psychiatric therapy programs, they will continue on their course. As a result, the Federal Bureau of Prisons created the Sex Offender Management Program, also known as the SOMP facility, a specialized institution for sex offenders. Although it seems like a luxurious treatment for them to get better, the unique mission achieved with this program is protected from the other inmates. They allow these inmates to reside at a specialized prison where they are more closely watched. The agency says that the presence of more sex offenders in SOMP facilities makes offenders feel more at ease discussing their concerns and seeking treatment. Here's the difficulty. Only a small number of jails with varying levels of security are allowed to participate in this program. This requires that the offender submit a transfer request to one of these facilities as soon as he is indicted, which, as you may have heard in some of the earlier stories, isn't always granted. Sometimes the review process may take months, during which the inmates keep asking, "What are you in for?" Therefore, to be admitted to a SOMP facility, a child molester must seek a judicial referral, which is not something that the average person can accomplish. Fortunately, there are consulting firms that, in exchange for a nominal price, may greatly raise the chances of SOMP classification. If the person has been found guilty and is incarcerated in a federal facility, he must buy time for his appeal to be heard. Although a SOMP facility appears to be the way to go, some such programs have failed. Also, some prisons are strict about their rules and keep sex offenders on death row. Take Moreland Prison, for instance, which is criticized for lacking a treatment program and was the horrifying prison where Charles saw a sex offender being hacked. However, their story doesn't end there. People have commented on Adam Johnson's condition there. Charles offers this quotation. Johnson replied, "He hasn't touched a newborn or a 10-year-old. But the longer he stays tucked up with the trash, the more suspicious other convicts will become." The biggest mistake Johnson could make is to stay on the not swing for even a second longer than he needs to. He concluded that the former Sunderland player is not a millionaire and will be irrelevant when a true monster appears. How do you believe SOMP facilities can treat child molesters better? Let us know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please remember to like and subscribe to CrimeFlicks.